Hello and welcome everybody to the BTS Career Zone. For anybody who's new to exploring the Career Zone, this is a place where you can access webinars like this one, podcasts and articles on all things to do with careers in financial services. My name is Alex Langhorne, and in this episode, I'm joined by a very special guest, Amanda Ford, a Managing Director of Tenet Financial Services, or TFS, as you might know them. She's an expert in all things self-employment. She spends all her time supporting financial advisors and mortgage advisors through the self-employed route with TFS. Amanda, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. Here at BTS, I mean, we work with lots of different people, all at different stages in their careers. Some just getting started in financial services, others looking to develop their career through the industry. Obviously, we support qualifications, so we work with people at all various stages. But a really common area that we get asked about is setting up as a self-employed advisor, both mortgage advisors, financial advisors. So today we've invited Amanda to come and talk to us about the different routes, the options for anyone thinking about going self-employed. And today really is quite focused on more experienced professionals who have perhaps spent some time in the sector for a little while and are just starting to explore the idea of going it alone. So if you're listening live today, you do have access to a Q&A chat. So if you've got any questions as we go through the content, please do feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'll be keeping a close eye on those whilst Amanda's sharing her wisdom. So we'll deal with those as and when they come up, but there'll also be space at the end as well if you want to ask your question live. If you're listening to the recording, we've also included contact details at the end of the session. So should you wish to get in touch with either myself at BTS or with Amanda to discuss any of the options or any of your thoughts around what things that have been discussed, feel free to get in touch. Amanda, it's really great to have you here today. I mean, I've read lots about your own journey from when you joined Tenet in 2004 to now heading up the support for the TFS self-employed advisors. And you've had lots to celebrate this year as well. If anybody's followed Tenet on LinkedIn and social media over the past week, they've just celebrated their 3rd birthday, which is amazing. Congratulations. And this year also been recognised as a Vouch for 2023 firm as well, which is a great achievement. So I'm sure you've lots of words of wisdom. I'm sure there's been sort of highs and lows along the way as well for yourself. And you'll have lots of great things to share about how you support advisors, some of the things people can consider when they're thinking about going self-employed. So enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Amanda now to give you the let's say the pearls of wisdom that she's here to deliver. So Amanda, hand over to you now, and please feel free to share your slide deck as well so we can have a look at the material you're going to be presenting from.
Well, thanks, Alex. No pressure there, pearls of wisdom.
Absolutely.
But yeah, exactly how Alex has just positioned today's session. I sort of want to take you on a journey of what it takes or what you need to consider to become self-employed and be successful. I will use Tenet Financial Services as sort of like a benchmark of ideas of what we do. But it's worth me introducing myself first to understand sort of what my journey's been and how I can feed into consideration for going self-employed. So yeah, quite rightly, Alex said I joined Tenet back in 2004. I actually came for a 3-day-a-week admin job in the events team, and I'm still here all this time later, so 20 years next year, which is really exciting. I've done various roles in my time at Tenet. I spent a chunk of time in the events team running their advisor development program. I then moved over into the recruitment team and I supported Tenet in growing its advisor numbers, bringing over AR firms into the business or individuals that were looking for new roles, whether that be employed or self-employed. And then in 2020, in name, Tenet Financial Services was born, and I was offered that opportunity to take on an advice business under the Tenet name. I've actually as well, most recently this year, taken on Tenet and You as well. Tenet and You is our employed advisor proposition. So it's quite interesting to have the comparison of the two businesses, the makeup of the advisors and the different support that those advisors need. But yeah, I'm here today to talk to you about going self-employed. First of all, about who Tenet Financial Services are. We've referenced it a little bit in the intro. So we're an appointed representative firm of Tenet Network Services. So we did celebrate our 3rd birthday on the 1st of October, which is fantastic and really nice. And we sent out cakes, and it had a great feel to think 3 years, and yes, highs and lows over those 3 years of setting up our business, the changes that we've gone through, but really excited for the next couple of years. I said earlier in name, we launched in 2020. We were formerly part of a company called Aspire Financial Management, and that was a combined employed and self-employed business. But in 2020, Tenet made the decision to split the two businesses. And if you cast your mind back to 2020, I'm not talking pandemic, that was when the rules around IR35 were brought to the table, and firms had to really think about how they deal with employed and self-employed advisors differently, and what worker status looked like. So that was when we decided at Tenet to split the two, to manage them differently and support them differently, albeit from a consumer facing, they would receive the same service. I've currently got 20 advisors in the TFS group, which you mentioned, we call it TFS for short. 20 advisors all across the UK, all based from home. I've got a mixture of wealth advisors, mortgage and protection advisors, all with varying degrees of experience. In particular, on the mortgage side, I have got some new starters, and on the wealth side, some more established that have been with me a lot longer and were part of the previous Aspire business. And I'm excited as well. We've got 7 new advisors joining us over the next couple of months, all ready to take that step to be self-employed. And they've all come from very different backgrounds, whether it be an employed position right now, whether they've been self-employed somewhere else and not getting the support that they need, that they're coming from all over, which is great. So I said earlier, my objective today is really to talk through with you what it's going to take to go self-employed if you're currently employed, or if you're in a self-employed position already and you just want to compare and look at the support you're getting where you are now to what could be offered elsewhere. So we'll go through sort of setting your stall out, business planning, cash flow, the practicalities, and then the help that's available to you as an established advisor. I often talk about going self-employed as taking the icy plunge. It can feel potentially quite lonely. It can feel like a jump financially when you've been reliant on a salary. And it can feel like, gosh, that's quite a big move to make. That's quite a lot of commitment. And in particular, in a regulatory space, a lot of people ask me, what are the responsibilities that sit on my shoulder as an advisor being self-employed? What changes from me being in a firm to being self-employed, either on my own or part of an established firm? Hopefully what I'm going to do throughout today is find you a warm towel to wrap around you and demonstrate that it's not quite an icy pond. You just need to find the right support system to go with you on your journey. If I talk, first of all, face into the concerns. People worry about going self-employed. People worry about making that step. And usually the main reasons I hear are the ones on the screen now. So typically the hassle of starting a new business and everything that goes into that, whether it be creating a brand, marketing arrangements, setting up the limited company, then learning new processes or even creating new processes as part of your own business. Technology, having to start from scratch, lack of support and guidance. And the big one that I come across quite a lot is no clients. And certainly people moving from an employed to a self-employed position often have to leave their clients behind and start again. Sometimes in a mortgage space, it's a bit easier for clients to move with. In a wealth space, it can take a lot longer. You could have a restricted covenants where you are working at the moment and not have the ability to take clients with you. The flip side of it is if people don't make the plunge to go self-employed, they'll be forever in that position. They'll be forever fueling somebody else's back pocket. They'll be forever fueling somebody else's client bank. So by going self-employed, you're sort of putting yourself in the driving seat and building an asset for the future, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through this presentation. I think it's really key for somebody who's considering going self-employed to understand why they're going self-employed. So I've put up there, you want to understand sort of why you want to go self-employed, what are your drivers, how are you going to do it, and what's the journey going to look like? And that's what I'm going to talk to you about through these slides. Usually the why is typically around the 4 areas on the screen. So time, money, autonomy, and control. Typically somebody is an established advisor who's been working in an organisation and starts to have that feeling of, I could do this for myself. I could earn more money by doing it for myself. I could decide where I work, when I work, and how much I work, and have that control over your future and your clients, as I said, around the asset, building that client bank for the future. That's you taking control. Time's a really interesting one. I think over the last couple of years, we've really understood the benefit of having the flexibility to be at home, to be available for family. And I speak to more and more people now that just want to have that choice of where they work and that ability to drop stuff to go and pick up kids or be around in an emergency. And it's a real passion of mine when talking to advisors about the self-employed route, is to demonstrate to them how, certainly at Tenet Financial Services, we can support them and be behind them should they need to step away, should their clients not be able to contact them, that they can contact us instead. So I encourage you to think about what's your why. Why are you deciding to make this jump? Because it's not always going to be easy. You're going to have rough days. You are going to have to self-motivate. You're going to get up some days and not want to do it. It's a very different mindset to somebody who's in an employed role. But if you can get to the bare bones of why you're doing it and keep reaching into that, the fact that you're going to earn more, the fact that you don't have to ask permission to go to the school play, the fact that you're building an asset for the future, the fact that you're deciding your destiny, then that will help you get through those tough days. It's really important as well, and I see this very differently in many advisors, as what does success look like? I said earlier, I've got a really broad spectrum of advisors in the group at the moment. Some are with me to service their existing client bank. They don't want to grow, they just want to deliver good service. Some are joining me now because they don't want the hassle of running their own business. They simply want to be in front of clients. And others are joining to build a client bank for the future. So have a think about what success looks like for you. Is it having your own business? Is it having your name above the door? Is it a financial success? Is it about an income target? Is it a lifestyle element in respect of where you work, when you work? And that flexibility, as I said, that comes out quite a lot in people choosing to go employed to self-employed. But there's a real power around being in control of your working hours. And then also that freedom from management and all the HR requirements that come with being in an employed role. That might be success for you. You might want that autonomy. So again, you're thinking about why you're doing this, and then what does good look like? What's going to be your achievements so that you can sit down at the end of the month, end of the year, and go, I've delivered on exactly what I wanted to do, and that's why I made this decision. It's always important, this comes from my time in the recruitment team, I think, to talk to people about entry requirements. And this relates whether you're actually going employed or self-employed. So if you've gone through a regulatory application before, none of the things on the screen will be a surprise. But typically through an application process, a company is going to ask you to evidence your competent advisor status. That usually comes from a reference. So when we reference reference back 6 years, does your current employer or current firm confirm that you have competent advisor status? If they can't do that, then you'd be making an entry as a trainee to a firm, and you're likely to need a mentor. It's a bit of a bugbear for me, is this one. I often see firms not signing advisors off as competent advisor, so that they're less likely to leave, so they've got a reason to stay. An experienced advisor is much easier to move than a trainee advisor. But certainly most will evidence it. But I'd encourage you, if you've been in a firm and you're not sure whether you've got it, check and find out before you're wanting to make the move. Obviously, with everything that's gone on in respect of British Steel and defined benefits, the FCA in any application are looking for any DB history that you may have. And let me be clear, that does include whether you've done it yourself or whether you've been party to a firm that's done it. I'm not saying it's a showstopper as part of an application. It's just something to be aware of that you will get asked about. So the more you know around, if it was you, the cases and the number of cases that you've done and your complaints history, the better. Other things which won't come as a surprise, financial services, they want to check that you know no CCJs, bankruptcy, credit concerns. Are you in a debt management plan or an IVA? If you are, there's usually rationale that a firm would look at and go, okay, are you paying it off? How long have you got left? So again, not always showstoppers, but something to be aware of. And then things like convictions, complaints history, have you been a director for another business? Do you have other business interests alongside your advising? These are all things that just naturally form part of an application form. And as I said, this is regardless of which firm you go to, and also regardless of whether you're going for an employed or self-employed positions, these will be things that will be asked. So talking about the how now, so eight boxes on the screen. I'm sort of going to walk through each one now around how do you do this? How do you set yourself up? How do you set yourself up strong when either moving employed to self-employed or moving from one self-employed business to another and comparing? So the first thing is, even though you're an individual within a firm, they will look to you to assess your business plan. So what are your aims and objectives? What are you looking to do? As I said earlier, in the broad range of group that we've got in TFS, I've got people who do want to grow and people who don't want to grow. And I often get asked, well, do you want me, Amanda, if I don't want to grow? And I say, well, absolutely. The main thing for me is that I understand how you want us to work with you. So I won't be ringing you up offering leads and new marketing opportunities because I know that you're not looking to grow. And their business plan helps me do that. So, anybody who's done business studies will have seen this list before from a business plan, covering off the goals. What are the objectives of you as an individual and your business? What do your sales and turnover look like for your first few years? Where are you going to get your clients sourced from? Do you want to specialize in anything? Have you done a SWOT analysis on you, your local area? Do you know who your competition is? And what do you think your challenges are going to be and what solutions would help you with that? And finally, what support are you going to be needing? So if somebody produces that for me as part of onboarding, that gives me a real shape and feel of what support we're going to need to give them. They might not know what their turnover is going to be, but if they tell me what they want to earn or what they've had in a previous salary, I can often work it backwards with them to go, okay, you'd need to do X amount of business to get Y amount of turnover, and then this was what your take home would be. So we can work with people on that. Similarly, on client source, I mentioned earlier, often advisors are having to leave their clients behind in the business that they're departing from. So if I know that, I know somebody's starting from scratch. So I'd spend a lot of time talking to them about lead generation and building a client bank. Alternatively, if they've got the option to bring clients with them, we talk about novation and data movement. And is the firm that you're leaving on board with that movement? So building that business plan is really, it's twofold. It's going to help the organisation that you're going to understand how they need to support you, but also it gives you your own personal track to run on to understand and see how realistic it is to make that move from employed to self-employed or from the other organisation. Cash flow, always a hot topic. So I've listed on here things to consider in respect of, money's in, money's out when you're going self-employed. In particular, if you're coming from an employed role where you've been used to a regular salary, that obviously changes when you go self-employed. But the main difference is as well, you get paid for what you work. So if you work hard, you benefit from that because everything's usually done typically on a percentage basis. So things to consider from your income, whether you're a wealth advisor or a mortgage and protection advisor, is, what's your new business going to look like? What ongoing servicing, have you got any already, or you're building an ongoing servicing platform? Do you take any, proc fees? Are you charging broker fees? And then what's your appetite for protection? Operational charges, which usually come from the firm that you would join, they typically will take a retention on business that you write, as part of being part of that organisation and the support that they offer you. But you may also see in instances where they provide technology, so whether that's laptops, an IT team, the software, so advice tools such as IntelliFlow Office, 27 Tech, Iris Dynamic Planner, and then your regulatory fees, which includes your FCA fees and your professional indemnity. So I would expect you to be able to talk to an organisation and then be able to outline exactly what you are paying them and how much. And you might find sometimes it's there's some things are fixed fees and some things are on a percentage basis. I just encourage you to make sure you're looking for the transparency when they're giving you charges, so you know what you're paying for and why. Other things to consider, so business expenses in particular, we've talked about client source, so client acquisition. So are you going to be purchasing leads? Does your firm offer a lead supply for you? How do you pay for that as a self-employed advisor? I'll give you a real example of that. In the two businesses that I run, I mentioned earlier, we've got the self-employed business as Tenet Financial Services and the employed business as Tenet and You. Obviously, in the employed business, they get a salary, we give them leads, and they get a bonus, basically. On the self-employed status, so that I make sure I tick the boxes around IR35 and that those people are being dealt with differently, we purchase leads in, we qualify those leads, and we pass them out to the advisor. If we pass a lead out to an advisor and it doesn't turn into business, they don't pay anything. If we pass a lead out to an advisor, they basically treat us as an introducer. We take an introducer fee on the leads that we supply, but that isn't for the whole duration of that client. So there has to be a financial transaction, the difference between self-employed and employed, but we only do it at the point that the advisor gets paid. So you're not upfront paying for a lot of leads to get started. Other things to consider around client acquisition is what are you using for your review sites? So Alex mentioned one of my missions when I started in TFS was to get us on the Vouched For guide for top rated. We managed to get the firm in and 11 of our 12 advisors at the time. And we're on track to repeat that next year. And it's really interesting. I went into that for the validation and the client reviews. In particular, when when an advisor is taking leads from a lead purchase site, the first thing the client's typically going to do is Google you. And Vouch For do a lot of effort to bump the reviews and bump your search optimization and your page up to the top of Google, so that you're prominent on that page. But that also gives the client a real validation on reviews that have been left by other customers. So I went into it for the review status, but actually now we're finding people get direct contact and referrals from that site. So didn't go in it for that, but we're benefiting from that now. And then other things to consider is around sort of social media support. I'm very keen on social media, but I'm also very keen on people being authentic with it. Don't do it unless it feels natural to you. You'll fight against it. It'll feel false and that will come across in what you're posting. But there is ways you can get help with it. So we work with a company called the Outsourced Marketing Department, who will actually post on behalf of our advisors if they wish us to do so. And finally, marketing and communication. So how are you going to market out to your clients? How are you going to send them communications? And then business expenses, as with anything, are you renting an office? You've got your tax, you've got supplies, you've got phone and travel. What we create is, as well as the business plan template that I talked about earlier, we do create with advisors a cash flow forecast. And this gives them a real idea of what their first 18 months are going to look like, from expectations of income coming in, charges going out. We also demonstrate what things are paid for by TFS and what things have to be paid for by them themselves. So caveat from me on the next two slides, I am absolutely not a tax specialist or a solicitor, but it'd be a myth of me not to mention these two areas. So these are really just for consideration. So when becoming self-employed, you have the option around your legal structure. So you could be a sole trader, limited company, partnership, or a limited liability partnership. You just need to work with an accountant and, based on your turnover levels for tax purposes, work out which is the best route for you. And similarly on the taxation, that accountant would also be able to help you with planning out the tax and national insurance that if you're employed is normally just happens for you, but you will need to pay that. And then also your operational expenses and allowance. But I didn't want to not say it, but not an area of my expertise, but we do introduce people to people who can help through the journey of onboarding with TFS. I've talked a little bit already about leads, but it's always a really hot topic. And I think it's one of the things that's appealing around the Tenet Financial Services proposition at the moment is we can demonstrate where we take leads from 3 different sources. We get referrals from the other parts of Tenet Group, whether that be somebody with an overflow or not a license in a certain area. We do our own business to consumer marketing at Tenet Financial Services. And then we work with cost per lead suppliers such as Online Mortgage Advisor, Professional Leads, Performance Leads, Echo Ads. I'm a bit of a lead geek. I did lead generation as part of my recruitment and my sales activity in former roles. And then I've definitely spent the best part of 18 months when I joined TFS filtering through different lead gen suppliers, working out the best conversions, working out how qualification works best. So that we now have a list of companies that we will work with. And I'm really passionate in the advice journey about the advisor doing the valuable bit, which is about being in front of the client. It's about giving the advice and generating themselves an income. So we demonstrate that in TFS very much by the fact that we do the hunting part. So we go and find the companies, we get the leads, we qualify them, and then when we pass it over to an advisor, it's somebody who's expecting, they're expecting your call. They know a little bit about you and Tenet Financial Services already, and we've established that they've got a need. It's much better for my employee team to be calling 10 leads, speaking to 5, and passing 2 on for an advisor. On the self-employed side, what we don't get involved in is diary management, though. So when that client comes to you, we typically say, Steve will call you in the next 24 hours to arrange an appointment. And we do that so that you can maintain that ability to decide where you work, when you work, and how much you work. Other things to consider, I've mentioned briefly already, sort of marketing, referrals, reviews, and are you moving an existing client bank with you? So a big piece of what you need to consider is your client source. Where is it coming from? What assistance can the firm that you're moving to or joining get and give you? And also, please get them to validate that. Please speak to somebody who's experiencing their lead support. Lead generation is really subjective around quality. So definitely speak to somebody that's been experiencing their lead generation. Something that if you went as a firm on your own, you'd have to consider, this is typically decided for you if you're going into an organisation, but again, think about the changes that you might have to make. So what's the back office system that firm is using? What advice software are they using? What client applications can they get? And how will they support you with marketing and communications? So we as a firm issue on behalf of our advisors every month a newsletter giving their clients current news, data, facts, fund management, videos and access to hot topics. And we do that for the advisors so that they don't have to think about it. But if they're moving, you might need to think about what's the back office system that you're on now. Will that data move over? Is it the same? What learning journey are you going to have to go on? Are the advice tools fit for purpose for what you need? Do they embed into the back office system is usually my big question, so that you've got a seamless end-to-end advice process. Support. This is a really big one for me, and I've started at the top with real person support. So I'm really keen when somebody's looking to join us for them to meet some of the individuals that they're going to be working with. I totally believe in what we do, but I'll often ask them to meet maybe their administrator that they'd be working with, their business manager, or another advisor that's experienced in our service. So that is key so that you understand, are you going to, you might get on with me on the call, but are you going to get on with the others? But also, are they backing up the same sentiment around the support that we offer. So what you should be looking for is, what's the business structure? How's it set up? What's their longevity? What's their financial path? What's their future looking like? What administration support can they offer? What business growth support can they offer? How are they going to get you to that next level on the income tier? What marketing support can they offer, both to promote you and the business, or is it solely focused on the business? What's their training and competence? What's their oversight model? What's their compliance regime look like? How much does that differ to where you are now? And a really underrated one, I've put cover on there. Typically as a self-employed person, you don't expect to be able to turn your phone off when you go on holiday. All roads lead to you as a self-employed person. But as a well-being advocate, it's one of the things I praise us for, is your admin is your backup when you are either away on leave or have something come up at home where you can't be available. So we ensure that an admin is introduced to all clients, that telephone numbers are on there, so that you can actually step away and have a break if you wish. And then finally, the referral opportunity. We always encourage advisors to look at, okay, if they're going in as a mortgage advisor, what if they come across a wealth piece of business? Is there somebody they can pass it on to? And vice versa. So that's something to look for in respect of support. So just going back through the journey that I've walked through there, I've said, understand why you either want to make the move from one organisation to another, or why you're choosing to go self-employed in the first place. What does your success look like? What's the tick in the box? What's going to motivate you? What's going to get you up on a morning? I'm often heard saying, take the horse to water, but I won't make it drink. I'll put the opportunities in front of the self-employed advisors, but they need to have the fire in the belly as well. And then we went through briefly, albeit you can get external support on, what's your company structure and taxation. And then your business plan and your cash flow, I think, are really key, so that you can really see in black and white what it's going to look like. And it'll also show the people that you're joining that you've taken those considerations and you've thought about it. And then finally, take the step. I've never seen anybody take it and regret it. Just to finish off, I've touched on briefly about how we work in Tenet Financial Services. There's obviously many organisations out there like us. We just thought I'd take the opportunity to just summarise, the support that we can offer. We've had a big campaign over the last 18 months now around being your own boss. And I'm a real fan of people, as I say, deciding where they work, when they work, and how much they work. We often refer to Tenet Financial Services as a franchise model. So you get the opportunity to be self-employed, but under a national brand. So we've done the legwork for you in respect of setting up the organisation, having the track to run on, creating all the documentation. We've gone through the lead gen trials on your behalf. What we pass out to the advisors is what's ready-made and proven. We are a whole of market independent financial advice business. We have a great employed team, mostly based in Leeds at head office, but work on a remote basis. And they can support you in respect of lead generation, administration, business growth. But I think sometimes I mentioned it very early on about going self-employed. Is it lonely? But what I love about our group is they are self-employed. They're all on their own business track, but they come together and share some best practice and good experience, the highs, the lows. It stands out for me in particular over the pandemic, the mortgage advisors coming together and saying, it's not just me that's struggling, is it? And somebody said to me, I don't feel like I'm on my own. I feel like I'm part of something. Talked earlier, that proposition and how we've set it up just enables you to have complete control of your working hours. You decide your own goals, your targets. We don't sales manage. And we'll absolutely work with you and support you on your business plan, but I won't be ringing you up every week going, how many appointments have you had, or when are you seeing that next client? And all of that without the strains of running the business and that regulatory thought process. So consumer duty obviously came to us as a firm like it has everybody else, but my advisors didn't really need to think about it. We worked out what our mechanism was going to be, how we were first of all going to survey clients. but also what we needed to do in respect of our offering. So the advisors had very little to do and consider, which leads into, my passion around them being in front of clients and generating that income for themselves. So we're going to stop for questions, I think. I'll just quickly pop up. There's a couple of contact details there. This is my email address, my LinkedIn page. And we do have a dedicated page on the TFS website for those that might want to consider going self-employed. But I will stop sharing now, and then we can take some questions, Alex.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amanda. There was so much content in there, wasn't there? There was so much information to process. So I've got the Q&A chat box open just now in case anybody does want to pop the question in there. Please feel free to. If you'd like to ask it live on the session, just pop up your hand and we can come to you for a question there as well. So just whilst we're waiting for people to think about questions, if there are any, I've got some that were submitted prior to this session for a few people who couldn't make the live session. So if that's okay, Amanda, I'll just pop in and ask some of those. Some of them are sort of quite unique to individual circumstances. So one was around what sort of investment do you need yourself to be able to do this? Is there a minimum capital investment or resource investment that you need to have before you can even think about doing this?
Yeah, really good question. So I'm going to talk a little bit from my standpoint of TFS. You might find this varies firm to firm in respect of support. But when I talked earlier, I talked about the cash flow. And that's a really important piece for people to understand, when are my fees going to land? When do I expect to earn? And we'll take somebody through it from our own experience. If I was to answer it, very black and white, I typically say for a mortgage advisor, either joining as employed or even moving self-employed, they typically need to probably cover themselves for 3 months. And then we'd start to see people earning from 3 months.
Okay.
And for a wealth advisor, I'd say 6 months, mainly because it takes a little bit longer to get wealth business over the line. It's a longer advice journey. And anybody that can do protection early on, that's a great win because you can get that money quite early and quite quickly. But yeah, cover, and probably say they're worst case scenarios, Alex. We demonstrate to somebody, if you took leads from day one, this is what your income could look like. But again, they've got to be willing to put some graft in at the beginning. And again, that also depends if they're starting from scratch or if they've got the ability to move clients over. But even when moving clients over, do not expect to be moving from day one, because we've got the wonderful world of providers and lenders that just want to take that little bit of time to move stuff over. So certainly in our world, we always say there is no upfront investment. So I purposefully do it that way. We don't charge the fixed fees for the first 3 months. You only pay for leads when you get paid on the introducer basis. And we upfront costs like your website, your vouch for page, your marketing out to announce yourself. So we cover all that. What you'll potentially see elsewhere is some upfront investment. And I'm only talking about this probably from experience from my recruitment days. Please check the small print of any upfront funding that you are given as to what contractual terms that might tie you into. Just from experience, I've seen some advisors try to leave and then they realise that they got some money up front. So I don't do that for that purpose. We don't offer guarantees. We don't offer upfront funding. We manage it from a cash flow basis, and then it's much more realistic and much more transparent for the advisor when they're joining.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful information. I think a lot of people are concerned that they need to have some sort of capital investment to start off. But looking at the structures available through someone like TFS, for example, there's options where you're really just covering your own salary, your own needs at home, if you like, for the startup period. And realistically, for depending on what your trade is, it could be 3 months, could be 6 months before you start to see that inflow from your business. Which is a lot shorter than I expected.
Okay, that's interesting. And we're going off our experience here. I think the big part of that is asking the firm that you're joining, what are you doing to support me to get going?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when do my fees, because even when we do start charging fees, it's not a direct debit, it's a charge applied to an account. So we don't want to leave somebody applying charges to an account the whole time. But the fact that we then pay weekly means that any monies coming through will land as quickly as they possibly can. So the whole point of this session was thought-provoking. It's just things to consider when you're talking to somebody about joining their business.
Okay. Another question that we had come through is around the sort of labour market, if you like. So becoming a self-employed advisor, there seems to be lots of advisors out there. So you're thinking about it yourself. How do you differentiate yourself? Is the market flooded? So sort of two questions. Are there lots of advisors out there? Should I even be considering it? Is it viable?
Great question.
But also, how do I then differentiate myself from all of the other advisors out there? What makes, should you be looking at a niche offering, a specialism,
Yeah.
or is there other ways to differentiate yourself and what you offer?
Yeah, really good question. And look, it's definitely not flooded. It's definitely not flooded. If anything, we've got an aging population of advisors. So,
Yeah.
you know, exactly what you guys are doing, we need more of
Yeah.
around the qualifications and that mentor to CAS support. You know, if I look out to the wider Tenet group and the number that want to retire or sell their client bank, there's opportunities there. There's a lot. Niche is an interesting one. I see it. I'm not a massive niche fan, but if you want to be niche in a certain area, just make sure, I think, from a client perspective, that you've got avenues to pass any business that you're not going to do elsewhere. Because I think what's really good is to be able to sit in front of a client and say, I'm your mortgage advisor. I can't help you with that pension, but there's somebody within the same group that can. So they'll still come to you. They'll still be your client, but they'll be serviced just by somebody else under that organisation. So be niche if you want, and there's pros and cons to it. But from a client perspective, just consider, you know, what you don't want them to do is to go elsewhere for what you're not doing and then move everything to them.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But no, I think self-employed and employed, there's roles for both. There's loads of roles for both. I think it comes back to what I said at the very beginning around the drivers and why people want to go self-employed, where they're at the moment, what's their experience been previously. But there's an abundance of opportunities for the right people in both camps, without a doubt.
I spoke to one of your advisors recently, and she was saying how important it was to have that personal brand that somebody can trust. So for her, that's what mattered when thinking about the lead generation. It isn't just it's not just a numbers game. It's you've got to put yourself out there as someone that people can trust.
Yes.
So that was the advice that she shared in terms of making yourself successful and building your brand. It was more about your what is it you offer and who is it you're trying to connect with and who do you want to trust you.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a nice way of looking at it.
It is. And we support on both. You know, I could quite easily supply leads all day long to advisors and take the introducer fee. But I'm really keen on them getting their own stuff through referrals and self-generate, because they make more money if they self-generate it, you know, and that's less resource on my side. So we really try and work on the balance. Yes, we'll absolutely give you everything under the TFS brand, but we'll lead with the advisor name. We promote the advisor, you know, if not more than the firm. You know, we sort of talk about us being the enabler for the advisor, but we'll help them organically grow as well as through that lead piece. And there's an example of something we did on that recently. We held an introducers event up in Musselburgh. We did an evening at the races. We invited our advisors from the local area, and they got them to give us names of solicitors and accountants that they wanted to invite along. And really interestingly, one of the introducers that had come along, the advisor had been trying to get in there for 6 months, but then got an invite from the firm, came along, now doing business. So we buddy up like that as well, so that we can sort of use our power of the name, but we're promoting the advisor and they're reaping the rewards of it.
Yeah, it's the power of networking, isn't it?
Yes, especially at the races. We love the
Yes,
races.
that sounds a good place to network. Another question that we've got here is around the level of experience before you embark on this. So obviously at TFS, you're looking for people with some experience behind you. You mentioned the route to CAS, the competent advisor status needing is something being important. Certainly for what you offer at TFS at the moment, to have that first.
Yeah.
for a lot of people who are going through the exams, it starts to sort of prick in their mind at that stage. Do I want to do this for myself, or do I want to join a firm when I've finished? Do I want to be employed? So if somebody is just going through the exams, they're at that sort of a qualification status, what sort of advice do you have for them in terms of thinking about self-employment? Is it something that's achievable straight after qualification? Does it need time? Is that essential? Yeah, so that's the question.
Yeah,
How much
okay.
experience
So
do I need?
So somebody who's coming in who's just got the qualifications is typically classed as either inexperienced or a trainee.
Mm.
What we would typically look for when accepting trainees is certainly some financial services experience. So whether they've been an administrator or a paraplanner previously will definitely help. There is other organisations that will take people from any background at all. But that's something to ask the people who you're trying to be prepared that some might want some FS experience, others might not. And then certainly for the inexperience, it's what support are they doing to get you to competent advisor status. So in our world, that looks like a mentor assigned to you for either 6 or 9 months, 6 for mortgage protection, 9 for wealth. And there's usually a cost up front for that mentor. And then after you've been signed off as competent advisor, you're then, let free and you're an experienced advisor. What the mentor will do is slowly let the reins off and go, okay, I've seen you do enough fact finds now. You're competent in those. You can do them without me. Otherwise, they can expect to have somebody sort of hand-holding them for a period of time. So I would advocate the experience previously, whether that's admin or paraplanning. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but I would advocate that certainly. Or we'd sometimes look at somebody who's run their own business previously, so they've got some level of business acumen. And then you need to consider what support's been offered to get you to competent advisor status.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you. So not impossible then with smaller amounts
It's
of
not
experience.
impossible. I think you've just got to think about it as a different route. And then we would also talk to them, that cash flow piece might extend out slightly because when you've got a mentor, you're having to arrange your meetings with your mentor, you're having to do side off, you've got assessments in between that. So that period of non-earning might be a little bit longer.
Yeah. Okay. We've got another question here, and this is quite a direct one. So the question is, how does the tenant self-employed proposition differ from the likes of SJP and M&G academies, who obviously also run similar offerings in terms of getting to competent advisor status, thinking about your business proposition. So how does the tenant proposition differ from places like that?
Good question. So in respect of model and offering, we're all aiming to do the same thing. We're all aiming to get somebody to competent advisor status and take them from their qualifications to be an established advisor. Things that are different, certainly I talked earlier about acceptance of experience. I know M&G will take non-FS experience. We do require some FS experience. There's a scale, I'm not going to lie, there's a scale in size, and then how many they're taking on and how they take them on in larger cohorts. But then there's also a proposition difference once they're an advisor. So there's a restricted model versus an independent model. So it's sort of thinking past their academy to what's the proposition of support that I'm offered afterwards. Not just, we're probably quite similar because we've got the same aims in respect of the academy, but what's the advice offering afterwards? And I think that's where people would see the most difference. The main one being our independent model. And for me, around the lead generation and client ownership is probably the other two items as well.
Okay. So do your homework, basically. Ask the questions.
I'd always expect people to shop around. I tend to give them a couple of questions to ask if they're asking elsewhere. But if you're making that move, moving networks, moving businesses isn't the easiest, especially when you do their own clients. So you want to go into an organisation and know that you're going to be there for a while. You don't want the disruption later on. So do your homework. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not a one size fits all, really, is it? It's what makes a successful SJP, for example, is very different to what makes somebody successful with Tenet or M&G or any of the others.
Depends what you want. Do you want the scale? Do you want great name, great brand? But what comes with that? We're a certain size. I have got growth aspirations, but our team will grow with that to try and keep us as a close-knit community as well.
Okay. Got another question here. It's let me have a quick read through it. So it's about if an individual has run limited companies in the past in completely unrelated fields or industries, is there any impact going forward when looking to embark on a new career in financial services in a self-employed capacity? So I'm not sure whether you're asking the question there about if there's been problems in the past. Will that sort of
That would
overshadow?
have been my
Or
first question.
is that what you're
So
looking? So if you could clarify that for me, that would be great. If you pop that in the chat, or are you thinking about the transferability of the experience? Because there's two ways we could read that, really.
I can answer them both, to be
Okay.
fair. So transferring of the skills and ability of having limited companies, that could be taken into consideration. But absolutely, there'd be a view on the other side that you referenced there, Alex, is what happened with those limited companies. Was there any issues? Is there any legacy issues? Now, if it's there might be fine. It's just usually a conversation with an authorizations consultant to go, talk me through this. What's been the journey? Life happens, stuff happens. And my biggest piece of advice when people are doing an application is be upfront. The worst thing that can happen is if you've got any of those things that I listed earlier, the CCJ, the debt management, etc. If that is found out by the authorizations team, that will be frowned upon. So if you've got any concerns or issues, address them up front, own them, and they're more likely to be talked through than if they're found out later on. I've seen that happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. These things do come to light, don't they? So it is absolutely best to be upfront.
That's it.
And in terms of somebody has had another limited company in the past, completely unrelated, but if they've done something before, and as we often find with entrepreneurial people, they may have had other attempts in the past that perhaps have worked, haven't worked, but either way now moved on. Does that reflect badly in any way if you've moved on from a different
No, I
type
think that's just part of your history. It'll form part of your application that says, this is my history. And again, there might be questions on, what happened? Did you dissolve that company? Why did you do that? Why were you a director of that business? And that's part of if they're live now, other business interests, you might be part of a husband-wife partnership on a limited company and be doing this. So again, it's just stuff that you announce it as part of the application, we go through it, but it's no deal breakers in there. It's where there's issues or there's been issues that we probably just need to do a bit more due diligence.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just like people do with their clients.
Yeah.
So like we ask for bank statements, we ask more, we need to ratify financial soundness of an individual, just like if you were selling a mortgage to somebody.
Yeah.
You need to do that as well.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one final question that I'm aware of, but if anybody else has got any quick ones, we are on just after 10 to now, so we've talked and talked, so we will be wrapping up shortly. So get your questions in quickly if you've got any more. But I've got one here that is around entrepreneurial spirit, if you like. Do you have to be an entrepreneur to make this work, or can you just be somebody who loves giving advice, loves what they do? Are you a practitioner or are you a business owner? Do you have to be one or the other?
Question.
The good one, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think if you're going into an established business that's already set up, has got the track to run on, you less need the entrepreneurial spirit, because your entrepreneurial spirit should come from the likes of me and whoever's running that organization, because they've got as much skin in the game as you. So I talked earlier about my passion around giving advisors the ability to do what they do best. So not do the admin, not seek out the leads, not do the marketing. We do it for them so that they can be in front of clients. The bit that's important is, as long as you've got client-centric spirit, let's call it that, and that you want to deliver the best for your clients and you're prepared to follow, that advice journey and the regulatory requirements, you'll do absolutely fine. You don't need to be cooking on gas on entrepreneurial ideas. If you want to take the next step and run your own business, then yes, absolutely. But if there's somebody else there doing that for you, you can just focus on the clients, and that's what I like. Yeah.
Focus on your craft. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, one final question just snuck in here. Let's have a look at this one. So, this is as someone with limited financial services experience looking to enter the industry, what would a charging structure look like? And then the follow-on question is, what value might one client provide to a business?
Okay, so
Okay.
if we're talking charging structure from an advisor to a client, if we talk in the wealth world, we work on sort of a 3-2-1 method, and this is quite popular, but it'll vary advisor to advisor firm, where you charge 3% on the initial, 2% on the next banding, and 1% on the next banding for ongoing servicing. And then on the mortgage side, there's usually a broker fee, and then you get your proc fee and your protection commission directly from the lender. And then what we were talking about earlier, just to make sure we've picked up charging in that question right, is that any firm will take a percentage of any of that before then they pay you the remainder.
Mm.
What was the second part of the question,
What
Alex?
value might one client provide to a business?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So we typically suggest that a client equates to sort of an average case size on a wealth advisor of about £2,000 on an annual basis. There might be a little bit more upfront on initial. And then for a wealth advisor, about £1,000 each transaction, such your broker fee, your mortgage fee, your broker fee, your prop fee, and then some protection commission. So I hope I've answered that right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
So
it's just for somebody very new to the
I suppose
industry
they're
looking.
working out if I've got X many clients and I need Y amount of money, what's it going to take? Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
What
sense.
does it really
So
look
yeah,
like on paper? Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
fantastic. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions popped through on the chat. Oh, what's a proc fee, please?
Oh,
Uh,
that's the no, it's
Fantastic
fine.
question. Yeah,
Great question. You get into lingo on these calls too
yeah,
easily, don't you? So a procuration fee is the amount that the lender pays the advisor for putting business with them. So it's commission. It's called a
yeah.
procuration fee.
Yeah, no, fantastic question. Never be afraid of asking obvious
No,
questions because
don't.
somebody else will be sitting there thinking, "What was that?"
When I
Fantastic,
took
thank
on
you.
the job for Tenet Financial Services, my first question, because it was TFS manager, I was like, "What's TFS?"
Oh,
So
yeah.
yes, there you
Ask,
go.
ask if you don't know. Absolutely. Oh, I think that's all the questions covered. Some great questions. So thank you for everybody who submitted questions live and for those people who submitted them in advance as well. It's been an absolutely brilliant session. I've learned so much as well, Amanda. Thank you. And we've even nearly filled a whole hour, which is absolutely
Amazing.
amazing. So we will now take this session away and then edit it so it's a nice video you can watch on demand. So I'll make sure that that's shared with everybody who's already registered, and we'll share it far and wide as well for people to get access to the information. So as Amanda said, if you would like to contact Amanda at all, she's available on LinkedIn, and also you shared your direct contact details on the slide at the end as well. So do get in touch with myself at BTS or with Amanda if you'd like more information. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.